Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Saint Squad Show. I'm your host, Dylan Sanders of Roundtable Sports. And even though the Saints lost, and I predicted that, I'm ready to eat some crow about a different Saints subject, the quarterback.
I'm Darian Gray of Who Dat Dish, and I have a little bit of a rant, and maybe even two of them.
It's the Saint Squad. Everything New Orleans Saints, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from down in the Big Easy, the way only Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Saint Squad Show, starting now.
Howdy, Who Dat Nation. Welcome back to the Saint Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every Sunday and Wednesday. We have a unique group of two experts here ready to bring you a fun and informative show on everything New Orleans Saints. Today we're going to be diving into the loss that the Saints just had to the San Francisco 49ers. And even though it is it wasn't the perfect day, it was a day where you can still find some positives throughout. But there was also plenty to discuss about what went wrong in this game. But before we do that, I want y'all to drop in. It's a live show. It's a fun show. I want y'all to drop in some chats if you're listening live with the hashtag Ross was right again, because he is 2-0. 2-0 in his predictions. But hashtag Ross was right again, and we'll get to some questions throughout the show. And if you're not listening live, thank you. We love you just as much. And let's just jump into our instant reactions to this game. I'm joined by Darian today. Darian, go give us your thoughts.
We've talked about this before. We talked about where the Saints are in their rebuild and their reload. They aren't at the point where they can make the mistakes that they made today early in the game. And I hate sounding like a broken record, but I also hate watching broken records, because that's exactly what I saw. So yes, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say the same thing again, because for the second week in a row, the Saints were close with no cigar. And obviously moral victories kind of exist in the world of a rebuild. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't want to hear about a moral victory. So I don't either. So I made a list as the game was going on, and I actually got tired of typing. So if I forgot something that you maybe felt was there, feel free to chime in. But there was so many mistakes in the first quarter alone that kept costing the Saints. Rattler gets a first down to Olave, ineligible player downfield by Fuanga. Great route by Olave in the red zone. And they had really struggled in that area of the field in week one behind him from Rattler. You look at right after that, an easy field goal by Blake Grupe, who is quickly dissipated any preseason hype that he had going into the year. He misses that. That's 3 points off the board. Let's pause for a second. Coming into this game, I think we all agree points were at a premium. You aren't going to be able to go in and shoot yourself in the foot, not have 7 points on the board. And then when you miss that 7, you missed the 3 as well. Completely unacceptable, inexcusable. And honestly, it was difficult to come back from. And in a game as close as this was, it wasn't a 3-point game. But these things do change the momentum of a matchup. Let's continue. Multiple first quarter drops by Juwan Johnson, who did eventually get going, but these were bad drops in critical situations. You look at third down, you're able to get the 49ers off the field. You get a defensive pass interference by Yadam. You have a hands to the face by Kool-Aid. Didn't love it, but it still existed. You have penalties that are taking away your first downs and giving first downs to the 49ers. And to cap it all off, you have a Rattler scramble for a first down that ends up getting called back by a holding call from McCoy. And I think that was all within the first 20 minutes. I could have gone the next 40 and wrote down other missed opportunities that you had. I could have, but I chose not to, because at this point, I would have been listing for the entire hour. But to me, this game comes down to multiple aspects, and I'll let you talk about them, Dylan. But for me, I lay out the problems in the miscues in the beginning of the game, where I don't think there's anybody that's a Saints fan. I don't think there's anybody that's a football fan. I don't think there's anybody on this camera right now who thinks that the Saints are built to dig themselves out of a hole. And if you're not built to do that, you can't be the one digging yourself in a hole. Unfortunately, for 2 weeks in a row, that's what we've seen from the Saints. Penalties and miscues. This can't continue to happen, especially when you have opportunities to win games.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think it really comes down to that first quarter, because it felt like the first quarter we were gonna go in here like I was gonna go in here scorched earth. No, that's not what ended up happening, because I really do think the offense overall, and Spencer Rattler especially, took major strides for the next 3 quarters. But again, it just wasn't enough. The Saints, they weren't. I think the play calling was a little bit better. And I think stuff like there were plenty of improvements, but it really was. It seemed like the preparation and communication. It also covered LSU. I feel like I've been saying this a bunch over the past couple days. The preparation and the communication feels off, especially at the beginning of games. And I think there was a lot of. It was either Spencer Rattler making a bad throw. It is what it is early on, or a perfect throw and then it was dropped. And it was momentum killers, momentum killer after momentum killer. Blake Groupie is a name that I don't know if we're going to talk about a lot today, just because we don't want to, but we might have to, because he has to be better. Like flat out 2 field goals, 2 extremely makeable field goals missed early on this season have cost the Saints dearly. And I agree with you. It wasn't a 3-point game that didn't decide it, but I think that momentum, that early push would have completely changed the outlook of this game, and I think it could have been better. I think as the Saints go, they are getting better week to week. I think they were a better team this week than they were last week, but still just not good enough, because my whole thing going into this game was you're playing against Mac Jones, you're playing without George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. I think the offenses match up pretty evenly, and then their defense was a little bit better. I think that actually ended up being the case, but it wasn't how I expected. I didn't expect Mac Jones to go out and throw for almost 300 yards and 3 tutties. I didn't expect Spencer Rattler to throw 3 tutties. It was interesting that the defenses, and I think I'll say for the Saints defense was set up for failure by the early inconsistencies of the offense, with the defense constantly being on the field. Like at that 2-minute warning, a gas defense is not going to be able to stop a Shanahan 2-minute drive. And I think that's what we saw. They were not able to do anything on that 2-minute drive. It was efficiently moved. They were not, ready. Yeah, I think me and you agree pretty much, Darian. But kind of both frustrating and promising.
And I'll say this. When you're talking about the trajectory of the team, a lot of times we focus heavily on the quarterback, deservedly so. It was the biggest storyline coming into the season. It'll be the biggest storyline going throughout the season. And I teased in the beginning that I have a rant or two. I see Rattler on the game plan, so I'm not going to dive into it right now, but I do have a Rattler rant directed at people and how they speak about Spencer Rattler. So I'll save that into the second segment. But what I'll say is Rattler performs well. It looks good. He has good moments. But then the defense, to me, did really struggle throughout the day. And Mac Jones didn't look like Mac Jones to me. There was a point where Jones literally, he jukes Pete Werner. Now, I'm not saying that Werner is the most athletic person I've ever seen in my life. I'm not trying to say he's an elite athlete. But I didn't expect Mac Jones to juke anybody. I didn't expect that they threw some pads on me for Jones to go.
You mean McCorkle Jones? He earned McCorkle Jones for that move. It was crazy.
This is first name status once you start juking people. But it was one of those plays where I was like, wow. And I think it was another play where he ran. But honestly, one athletic play from Mac Jones in the game is unexpected. So maybe I just started seeing double. But the point is that Jones had a good game. I thought that Jones was efficient. They started off heating him up. I thought that the San Francisco offensive line did perform a little bit better as the game went on. So it seemed like he had more time at moments. You had Christian McCaffrey, who, let's see what his final stats ended up being. We can talk about the eye test a lot, but McCaffrey ended up with 13 for 55. And it did feel like he kind of stopped getting the ball towards the game, but that's a 4.2 clip. Not terrible, but not great either. And I just think that the defense allowed too much. Lance had a phenomenal point last week, and it's kind of the inverse of it this week. He says, hey, you give up 17, you're supposed to win that game. Well, I would argue that with Mac Jones at quarterback, no George Kittle, I would think that scoring 21 would have been enough. I thought that maybe if you got to the 17 to 20 range in this game, you'd win. I'm not calling this a shootout, but who thought that Mac Jones versus Spencer Rattler, incorrectly called the worst quarterback matchup we've ever seen? I recency bias, but who would have thought that would have been even a 26-21 game? So I thought the defense needed to step up. I thought that the defense allowed a little bit too much under the circumstances, and the Robert Saleh defense looked like the 49er defense, the Jet defense that we had come to love from him. So I thought Rattler did a decent job. I know we're going to talk about Rattler in a second, so I'm trying to not go too deep into it. But Alvin. Here we go. Instant reactions. Alvin had a solid game. He had 21 carries for 100 yards, nearly 5 a pop. He actually had a 0-yard run on his last carry of the day, so it would have been 5 even if he hadn't had that. But this was a better game, and it looked like they came in with the plan to focus on getting Kamara the ball. And I think that was absolutely the right call. And you saw when it started working, that's when the offense started working. I think Rattler had his moments throughout the 60 minutes, but once Kamara started running the ball better, that's when you started to see the offense truly start flowing. And that offensive line, I'm going to give a lot of crap throughout the day. And, but one thing they did is they did begin to block a little bit better until the end. They did begin to run block a little bit better in the later parts of that game. And it allowed the offense to at least attempt to come back until, late game. Your stars make plays. Bosa made a play. Huff made a play. Fuanga got beat on that. And that was the end of it.
I want to touch a little bit on the defensive side in terms of immediate reactions. Immediate reaction, Pete Werner got to be better in coverage. I think that he had a couple nice plays in run defense, but I think he got exposed in coverage a couple of times. And I think that overall the pass rush was lacking at Chase Young. Carl Granderson came out. He had 2 sacks. Chris Rumph even had a sack. But still, in terms of consistent pressure, I think that it's very clear that they're missing someone they just paid $30 million or whatever, however much they just paid Chase Young. More than that. They're missing an elite pass rusher, and that could be Chase Young, but whenever he comes back. But I think it's very clear that Pete Werner and the pass rush were the 2 biggest concerns I had on the defensive side of the ball.
And it was kind of disappointing because the pass rush did start well. Yeah. It started off really good, and then it just kind of disappeared. And, I excuse Werner for his Christian McCaffrey one. Now, he was just set up to fail there. He's going to lose that 8 out of 10 times. If you ask me, probably 9 out of 10 times. That was a well schemed up play, and I'm not going to excuse him completely. I just know what his deficiencies are as a player, and I knew that wasn't going to be something for him. But the mental error on that touchdown was the one that was more concerning to me. It was the one that was more disappointing because it wasn't like you're just going against this player who is better. You actually looked lost. You looked like you took a false step. It looked like you took yourself out of position more so than Jones did something to you, or I think it was Jennings that caught that pass, or Jennings just had a nice reception while you were close in coverage. It looked like at least maybe you could have had an opportunity to try to get a hand on it, but he didn't because I don't know what he saw. I would like to hear, but it didn't seem like there was anything in front of him that would have distracted him, but he did kind of jump towards his right while Jennings was running towards his left. So I don't know what that was about, but yeah, the pass rush and Pete Werner in coverage were 2 of the things that really did stand out. And I thought that if you want to go back to being positive, we didn't really see much of Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
that's something to be said.
Much less of Kool-Aid than last week.
Yeah, much less of Kool-Aid, more of Isaac. So it was kind of a trade-off. But I think that if I had to pick one guy to be picked on throughout the season and me not to be as frustrated, it'd probably be Isaac Yiadom because I'm gonna give him the Spencer Rattler treatment that everybody else gives, right? Well, you got a young guy on the bench, so maybe Quincy Riley eventually gets in and you see what you have there as a potential.
He played a little bit today. I know Riley played a little bit. I can't say much on how he performed off the top, but I do know he played a little bit today. Yeah,
so maybe you see that moving forward. And then also Kool-Aid has the potential to be a guy for you long-term. I don't think that Yiadom does. I don't think that that's how I'm looking at him. So if it is a situation in which he's getting picked on, he's not playing up to par, thinking large, right? Thinking beyond 2025, I think that it's much easier to look at him not being a part of the team than Kool-Aid not being your top guy or not being one of your top cornerbacks. So that's the way that I look at it. Early, immediate reaction. But yeah, let's get to Spencer Rattler. I'm ready to chastise the people.
All right, guys, get ready because Darian's about to go in right when we come back. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day. I decide to put on my pants one leg at a time. You decide to come in and listen to the Saint Squad show. But together, we can both choose to put on PrizePicks. Being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. And honestly, it's just fun for me to go in and use and see what the projections are from week to week. I use it to kind of help my set my other fantasy lineups, and then I ignore that advice and then do my own thing and lose my matchups. But that's not PrizePicks' fault. So download PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Next week, they're going to have a max discount on Patrick Mahomes over 0.5 passing yards. That's the easy leg for your lineup. And that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, Darian. Let's hear it. Let's go in. Go in.
No, listen, don't build the stage for me.
I'm joking.
Seriously, okay. Rattler had a couple of missed throws, and we're going to just go in and analyze the performance. We can do that, and we will do that. But first, I think it's completely unfair the way that we talk about Spencer Rattler. The whole conversation around Rattler, every time people talk to me, did Rattler play well enough to keep Shuck off the field? Did Rattler play well enough to not talk about the 2026 quarterbacks? How about the 2026 quarterbacks play well enough for us to have a conversation about Rattler? How about that? Let's flip the conversation, because I have questions about a lot of those guys coming out of college, but I digress. This is not the college football squad show. This is the Saints squad show. So let's talk about Rattler. When I look at Rattler, I see a guy who is playing well. I see a guy who is improving. I see a guy who has moments, and I'm tired of us breaking down his whole performance based off of when is he going to leave the field? Why are we itching so bad to see him off of the field, right? And if you want to have a conversation about the value placed on Tyler Shuck, we can have those. But please, let's talk about what Rattler did on the field and not all of the storylines. That's cool in the preseason. That's cool in training camp. But we're in week 2 now. I'm 2 weeks tired of talking about things that aren't what's going on the field. I'm 2 weeks tired of it, because not only is it a conversation that I don't think needs to happen immediately, because he got named the starting quarterback. After 1 week, we shouldn't be talking about is the backup coming in, right? At least give it some time. That's number one. Secondly, I want to talk about football. Like, I want to talk about real football. I don't want to talk about the fact that Tyler Shuck is waiting in the wings and Nussmeier and all these. Spencer Rattler is playing well enough for us to talk about football itself and not replacements. And that is, to me, extremely unfair, because the performances, at least of his first week, and I wouldn't be surprised if it continues the second week, they have been overshadowed by things that, quite frankly, right now do not matter. They are not important. They are not important, at least the 2026 conversation. Mm-hmm. At least that conversation. If you want to talk about Shuck, okay. But I'm not worried about Shuck. Right now, I don't think that Shuck gets into the game. If Spencer Rattler continues to play this way, I don't know if I see Shuck, unless it's just a terrible season and we keep losing close, and now you want to see what you have in a young quarterback. But as far as Rattler getting benched because he played so poorly that now we have to see what the rookie has, I do not see that happening, because Rattler has played well enough. I'll, volley it over to you for you to talk about his week 2 performance, but that just was something that had been getting under my skin a little bit, and I hadn't had the real platform to say it because I needed to. It's just getting unfair. No. Let's talk about his performance as it is and not everything else that is so far away from our attention span, or should be so far away from our attention span.
You're going to throw it to me, and I'm going to be like, put in Tyler Shuck. I'm tired of losing games.
Kick him off. Kick him off.
Yeah. No, okay. As someone who was on the side of playing Tyler Shuck this season, I think that the coaches have clearly made the right decision. That's why I don't get paid that kind of money. I get paid a little bit of money to come and talk about it, but I'm not a decision maker, and for a good reason. I think that Rattler clearly has the team on his side. I look to a play like whenever he does get pushed out of bounds and everybody comes and defends him and, get a little late hit. Everybody comes, they get in the face. It's like a thing that teammates should do, but it is still a sign that the teammates have his back. They want him to win. They want to win. And I don't think that there's anyone on the field that wants to win more than Spencer Rattler. You see it in the way he runs, the way he emotes. I think that there's no one can say that Rattler doesn't want to be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. I think he has, earned that right, and I think that he'll, still be the next couple of weeks at least. So let's get into what he did. I think he started off poorly. He was, and to be fair, the receivers also started out really poorly. Chris Olave has to be a lot better. Juwan Johnson has to be a lot better. Rashid Shaheed had his moments, but he needs to be, I guess, a little bit more consistently open for someone as fast as he is. So he didn't have the greatest help, but there were times where he simply missed the throw. He made the wrong decision. He put the ball behind. He put the ball too low. It was not a perfect day for him, but I think he responded well because the last three, if you watch him play and you have your team's quarterback play like he did for the last 3 quarters of the game, you kind of feel like you're probably going to win the game because he did not make really any big mistakes. He ran the ball when he needed to. He ran the ball hard. And I think that it was a very impressive day for Rattler overall, though he did not have as much help as you would like to see, and the Saints did not win at the end.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to say because a lot of times, this is extremely polarizing, to be honest, and everybody wants to pick a side, and typically those sides are extreme. So if you feel good about Shucks, or excuse me, if you feel good, and I'll just talk about Shuck now, who's trying to put him in, but I try to put him in the podcast. No, but all this conversation around Rattler, if you feel like he did well, those who are against Rattler say, well, he should have hit Olave. Yes. Spencer Rattler did not have a perfect day, but he had a solid day.
Very few quarterbacks in the NFL have a perfect day.
Yes. Rare. Could you improve? Yes. Right. Like, it's one of those things where Rattler, Shuck, how do you feel? Oh, Rattler shouldn't be in. You should have went with your young guy. So now we're going to talk about every single mistake that he made. But let's look at these final numbers, right? The final numbers have him going 25 or 34. I can count at least 2 Juwan Johnson drops. I count at least 2 Juwan
At least 2 drops. Chris Olave drops too.
That's 4 passes right there. So you're talking about maybe 29 of 34 if you're doing adjusted completion percentage. 3 touchdowns, 207 yards. He was pretty efficient. I thought that he was mobile. He showed good utilization of his legs. It was not a perfect day, but who's expecting it to be? Like at the end of the day, who is expecting Spencer Rattler to come in and be a perfect quarterback? If you are, I'm sorry, you're going to get your hopes up and you're going to be disappointed pretty much every week because that's not going to happen. I think that he can be a solid quarterback. I think that he has been a solid quarterback. I'm not asking for him to be upper echelon because I'm realistic. If one day he develops into it, whoop-de-doo. But right now, I'm not looking at a situation. I'm not looking at a situation where we're going to have Spencer Rattler be the starting quarterback. It's going to be a star quarterback. I just want to see if he can be a starting quarterback. And through 2 weeks, he has shown me that. So I am happy with what it is that Spencer Rattler has done. I am excited with what he's done throughout. Just forget the week 1. This week, I liked what he did. There were moments where I wanted things to be better, but if I had to grade him, it would definitely be passing. It would probably be in the B range. It'd probably be in the B range if I had to grade him. It wouldn't be an A because he did miss a big time throw that took points off the board. I thought he was overall safe with the ball. He had that last fumble, that was a turnover by Bryce. Well, did they recover? I don't know if they recovered. Who cares if they recovered? But
Ruiz recovered.
Okay, so he doesn't have any turnovers, right? So he protected the ball. And honestly, that Huff rush, and that was a really good rush. That was a really good hand-eye coordination to get to the ball, too.
Wait, let's talk real quick. Sorry to break you off. I do want to, but while we're still on the offense, one thing, I don't know if we've talked about it. We might have talked about it a little bit. Let's talk about the Alvin Kamara fumble. That was a huge momentum killer. That was a big one. Let's talk about that a little bit. Wow.
I thought that was a bad pass. I did. Yeah. I thought that was a poor pass that led to a very unfortunate play. Because if it wasn't put kind of behind him, it doesn't get up on the top of his head, and then Fred Warner doesn't punch it out. So it was kind of like a domino effect.
Yeah.
I was trying to watch the feet and football move thing. I don't know about you. Every time there's a fumble, and I was just like, well, he bobbled it. Did he have possession? Did he make a move? And
it feels like they flip a coin every time.
That's okay. I'm glad I'm not alone.
No, you're
glad I'm not alone. But I'm glad you did it because I would have never gotten to that. That's another missed opportunity. I should have included that in my first rant where you get close. Red zone inefficiencies and being close to the red zone inefficiencies are they're too prevalent. They're too prevalent. The penalties are too prevalent. These are issues. So yeah, that was the real momentum killer where it felt like the Saints were finally getting things going, and then you fumble. And now did that drive result in points for 49ers, or did they just take points away from the Saints on that?
Fumble, the touchdown drive after the fumble.
So I'm looking at it now too. When you fumble that ball, it's 19-14, and you're driving. There's a chance it's 21-19 after that. These are the mistakes that we're talking about, where it's very difficult to come back from. You can't make these mistakes.
Yeah, again, like the Saints are simply not good enough to make big, crucial mistakes, multiple crucial mistakes, and, come out on top of a team like the 49ers, because that is a defense that's not going to allow you to make mistakes. And whenever Mac Jones is playing like Tom Brady, you're not going to be able to do anything else. I say Tom Brady can't move like that. Whenever he's playing like prime Mike Vick.
Oh, wow. Man, Dylan, you know what? Mac Jones deserves this after a juke. Mac Jones hasn't juked anybody since Pop Warner. So
we can crown the next Vanilla Vic, and it's McCorkle Jones.
Who was the first one? Daniel Jones?
Daniel Jones.
It's something about those Jones. You know what I'm saying?
Something about those Joneses.
It's something about them. It's something about them. But yeah, no, that's a great point. And I really love that defense. I think that that style of defense, you see it in San Francisco, obviously. You saw it in New York with the Jets. You see it today with Houston. I really do love that athletic, rangy linebacker defense. I think that Fred Warner is obviously, one of the guys, not just at his position, but on the defensive side of the ball, period. But he had a solid running mate too, who made some athletic plays. Those athletic linebackers are the way to go against a player like Kamara, and San Francisco had it. So that was
Saints could have had one waiting with Pete Werner, but we'll talk about the defense a little bit more. We'll talk about the defense a little bit more later.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize I missed that. I was out here slandering the defense prematurely.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else? Let's talk Talise Fuanga real quick. I'm still of the camp that I think that we should be sitting him until he is fully healthy, because I think the last thing that the Saints need as a rebuilding team is another Ryan Ramczyk situation where the knee never really heals and it gets worse and worse. And he's certainly not playing good enough football right now to be like, okay, we can play him through an injury.
No, 100%. 100%. If this is going to be his quality of play due to injury, he should be sat, and it's kind of a built-in excuse too. It's always a knee. And I believe it because I came in and I praised him going into the season. I praised him going out of the season. I praised him all through his rookie year. I think that he's fantastic. This is not the Talise Fuanga that I knew. It's not the Fuanga that I saw at Oregon State. This guy has really been struggling, and I would rather sit him. I don't have a high outlook for the Saints anyway. So if you have to put Richardson in the game and you have to put somebody who hasn't really played right tackle in order to save the health of your player, that's what you do. That's what it's not even a conversation. His health is way more important than trying to beat the San Francisco 49ers. If he is limited, you need to sit him and get him healthy, because it is hampering him and it is shaping his play. And he talked about his confidence throughout the offseason. These type of performances are the things that can hamper your confidence. I don't want a limited health and limited mentally Talise Fuanga at right tackle. I don't.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers right now just to see, because I feel like, Asim Richards did struggle whenever he was put in last week, but he, the Talise Fuanga has not been much better. He has, PFF has already updated for this game, and they have him as 8 pressures allowed through 2 games. Unacceptable for any level of football. not just, a first-round pick that you're expecting to be a franchise guy. I think that, especially after this week, there's no reason to not just let him heal up, because the Sim Richards 2 pressures last week in 26 snaps, also bad, but it's not worse than what you're getting from an injured Fuanga.
Also, to flip it, I wish that Banks hadn't given up that late sack, because he had a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the type of play that shapes how we talk about a player, right? He gave up this sack, he gave up this sack to Bosa at the end of the game. Yes, it was critical. It was disappointing, but he was really good throughout. I didn't see much. I thought he was strong and solid in pass blocking when I saw him, right? But mostly there was no reason to pay attention to what Kelvin Banks was doing on the left side. So one side of the offensive tackle is doing well. The other side has been struggling. So it's kind of a crapshoot, man. It's really disappointing what you're seeing. I think that the offensive line as a whole needs to get better, and run blocking specifically. I'm tired of seeing all of this contact. I would love to know what the run after contact numbers are, or yards after contact numbers are, because it feels like whether it's Miller, whether it's Kamara, you're going to get contacted pretty early with this offensive line. They got better as time went on, but all in all, I don't think that this was a solid performance for them.
No, not at all. All right, well, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball, talk a little bit about that. Remember to drop in any questions you have in the chat with hashtag Ross was right again for the last segment, but we're going to get into some questions and defense and our players of the game coming up next.
Oh, and Ross.
Oh, and Ross.
Hello.
He's like Joe Hendry. Say his name and he appears.
Hey, Ross, guess what we're doing right now?
What's that?
Going to an ad. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice. Your barista, your barber, maybe even in the comments section of a YouTube chat for a Saints-based podcast with an unqualified host. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support. That's why BetterHelp is here with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience. BetterHelp helps you find your right match, someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. I like that you start with a simple questionnaire, and BetterHelp does the matching work for you. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists at any time with no extra cost. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Ross is back. Hey, Ross.
What's up, guys?
What's up? We are going into we're going to talk a little bit of the defense, but you're here. Give us your first initial reactions of the game overall.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Saints were in it again late, but it's the slow start. It's the third down inefficiencies on offense and in the third down penalties on defense that ultimately kind of killed them in this one, as well as some early drops in this game, right? I mean, you make that connection with Chris Olave in the end zone, and that's not dropped or thrown behind. Yes, both things can be true at the same time. And all of a sudden, like, you're in a much better position, and you're not relying on, a potential missed field goal there. And so I think that the Saints did some things that kept them out of winning this game, but also did things that kept them in competing in this game, if that makes sense. And so for me, like, that's kind of the tale of this game. It's not a tale of two halves. It's not too little, too late, or anything like that. The Saints, at the same time, kept themselves out of it while keeping themselves in it on their own. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway in this one. This is a young team that's still growing and still trying to figure things out. So not super surprised by this, this result, but I was pretty surprised about the final score. That's for sure. I didn't think it would be that high scoring a game.
Yeah, I did not either at all. And I wanted to throw some at y'all, a stat at y'all, and just see what y'all think and what it says about a couple of younger players that we might need to see a little bit quicker than, we would want. PFF has already updated the stats for this game, and I wanted to but look to Ike Yadam and Pete Werner. They were targeted a combined 14 times, allowed 11 completions for 160 yards. Not good.
No,
not good.
Those two guys were the weakest links on the football field for me on either side of the football.
Yeah, I agree. Darren, what do you think of those two and what the Saints could do moving forward?
I like Danny Stutzman a lot. I'll be honest with you. I know that that's typically Lance's job, but Lance is here today. So I'll do the Danny Stutzman hype. Okay. Anybody who's going to roll out there in the neck pad, you got a fan in me. But when it comes to Stutzman, I just think he has a lot of untapped potential. I can't sit here and tell you exactly what he is because he hasn't been on the NFL field in the regular season to really make that analysis. But I'll say that I am extremely excited. I do think that he has a higher ceiling, and you can still say that because he's a rookie. I don't really like saying ceiling too often because who are you? How many people really hit their ceiling? Right. So, but he has the higher ceiling right now. And, maybe that's because he hasn't been seen as much. But if Stutzman ends up getting on the field, I think he's a really good run and hit player. I think that he's a good energy player. I think that he's somebody who can make contributions. He's going to have his mistakes too. So, it's not like you're going to switch from Warner to Stutzman and all of a sudden you're perfect. That's not going to happen. But if Warner does continue to turn down, because he had a good week 1. I thought he had a solid week 1. But in week 2, he was, like Ross said, one of the weakest links on the team. If that continues, I do think that you have a ready-made solution in Danny Stutzman, who I like Quincy Riley, but if I had to, coming into the season, bet who got on the field first, I probably would have put my money on Stutzman. So I'll take the Stutzman side of this and let Ross and Dylan, you guys talk about Riley if you want to.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think Riley, first of all, I agree with a lot of what you said, right? There's a lot of potential in these young guys. We don't really know, to Darian's point, what the floor and ceilings are just yet. But at some point, you start looking to what your young players have and what your foundation is. What's the bedrock that you have to build your foundation upon? And so I think that becomes another part of the equation too, that it's not just about, hey, who's going to help you go out there and win games right now? Who's going to go out there and help you win games tomorrow? Who's going to go out there and help you win games next year? And so I think that there's something about getting a look at as many of these young guys as possible when the door's open for them to do it. I thought Quincy Riley was going to come in and immediately start. I really did. I thought that he was going to be a guy that was going to come in and win that job. He never really got the opportunity. He didn't see a lot of first team reps during training camp or anything like that. Didn't deal with injury or anything outside of mandatory minis and stuff like that. But then once training camp rolled around, he was good. He was out there. And so the way that they got him up against the ones was that they started playing first team offense versus second team defense. And so that's how he got his reps against the ones, but he didn't get his reps across from Kool-Aid, across from Alante, all those other things. And the thing that stood out to me was I got targeted that much in this game. Oh, well, you gave combined stats. How many catches and targets did Yadam have?
6 catches on 7 targets for 80 yards.
Yeah, and this is a game to where he wasn't they took him out on base snaps. It was Alante and Kool-Aid on the outside. And
he played 38 snaps and gave up 6 catches for 80 yards.
Right. So the game plan was throw at 27 by San Francisco, and it worked what they did. And so I think that that's something that you have to take a look at. I don't think that the Saints are going to be in a hurry to bench him. He's the veteran guy. He's the guy that has the connection with Brandon Staley, all that kind of stuff. But if things continue to go the way that they have over the course of those first 2 games, it would not surprise me if by midseason you're at least getting a look at Quincy Riley, who has more takeaway potential, has more ball hawk potential, and is a very physical player that's very accustomed to playing in sort of this match zone coverage scheme. And so I think that he would be a good fit for them. I don't know if he's going to be an improvement, but you will have time to find out at some point this season for sure, if things are going the way they are.
Yeah.
And I want to fix something I said, because I agreed so heavily when you talked about thinking Riley was going to be the starter. I know people may be like, well, you just said Stutzman will get in first. Yes, but I changed my opinion around July.
He said yes.
That did happen.
You're right, but you're also wrong.
Oh, did I contradict myself? Maybe I did. But let me say this.
However,
after the draft, I thought Quincy Riley was going to end up being your starting cornerback, right? Mm-hmm. After the draft, I felt like that. Once you got into training camp and I realized that there was no real competition, shout out to you, because your coverage made me realize, it's not really Riley versus Yadam. It wasn't that. It was one guy clearly had the starting role. Once I seen how certain it was and I realized that Stutzman and Riley were in the same position of not really competing for a starting job, that's when I began to believe that Danny Stutzman would get in first, either through question marks. I thought that Ike had a potential to be a little bit more solid, but then also injury and things of that case. You knock on wood because you never want that, but history has been history. Allow me to real quick turn, we're talking about two rookies who may get on the field. But one thing I wasn't able to see because broadcast copy is how did Sanker look? So I wanted to ask Ross from an eye in the sky point of view of what you saw from the rookie.
Yeah, I thought he had a pretty strong game. He didn't have any big impact plays or anything like that, but he did a good job, making and forcing Mac Jones to look off some of those opportunities deep. And he's just a really physical player coming down and being able to make some of those plays. I thought that some of the best stuff that he did was when he was crashing down on either a shallow pass or a run play and then getting in on the tackle or getting in on an opportunity to make a play there. That's something that this Saints team has a lot of trouble with. Like Alante Taylor in particular is somebody that has a lot of really good things that he does, but he's not the strongest tackler. And that's where a guy like Jonas Sanker coming down and helping out has a big impact. And you saw more than a few missed tackles by the Saints secondary today, but I didn't see a lot of it from Sanker. So I'll need to go back and really watch everything to get a look at it, but he was not a guy that stood out to me for the wrong reasons at all on Sunday.
Oh, to clear something, I saw a couple of people in the chat. We had some questions about whether or not Sanker played. Shout out to Pammy Whammy, but people were saying briefly a little bit in fourth quarter. I think that goes to show that he really did not have a bad day because he played 71 snaps. Yeah, he played the whole game. So he played the whole game. So he was out there, and he was targeted once in coverage. Gave up one catch for 4 yards. So nothing bad. He had a missed tackle. But pretty much everyone did. Alante Taylor credited with 5 missed tackles on the defense. He had a 24.8 tackling grade.
He was really frustrated with himself during the game. Like you could see him at certain points where he would miss a tackle and he would get up and he would kind of like punch at his hand or something like that. Like he was pretty upset. I mean, he knew that his tackling performance was not the strongest throughout the game.
Yeah, and with Sanker, that one catch, I think, was the pretty good play that he made on Christian McCaffrey on that out route. I think that was the one catch that he allowed, and I thought that was a solid play. That was one that stood out to me. Obviously, like I said, broadcast, you only get to see a certain section of the field.
Right.
But that part was a good play. And I also thought there was I don't remember the exact situation, so I won't try to describe it, but it was a run play towards the offensive right where you saw Sanker fit that hole. And honestly, I thought that the Saints had a lot of difficulty throughout the game fitting in the run game. I thought they had they did a bad job. I was gonna say they had a difficult time, but they did a bad job filling in the run game. And that was one of the plays that stood out because it's funny. I watched the game with my friend. I was saying, like, sometimes when you try to watch things and not see where the ball's going, it's always fun to watch the player who ends up making the play and see how it happens. So with Sanker, it was interesting to see him read, and then shoot the gap and not just get there and we're going to muck up the play. He made the tackle. So if Lance has Danny Stutzman, I have Jonas Sanker, right? Like, I think we all end up developing our guys. I am a Jonas Sanker fan club member, if that's a thing. If it's not, then I'm the founder. Like, that's how I look at it.
It's certainly a fan club on this podcast. We've been seeing his praises for a long time.
I wanted to be the founder, but okay, I'll be a member.
We can make you the president.
There you go,
President Darius Gray. We give you that title. Let's do something a little bit different. I'm going to jump to our next break a little bit early to give us a little bit more time for our last one because we have I want to get to our players of the game, and we also have a couple of interesting chat questions I wanted to get to. If you want to ask another one, use hashtag Ross was right again because he's 2-0 in our prediction.
and I got the 100-yard rushing game for
that is true. And you almost lost it at the end there, but
I know.
but you didn't. Hey, Saints Squad Show fans. If there is one thing I hate more than watching the Saints lose, it's paying full price for gas. There's no reason you should have to do both, and it looks like you might have to do one of them a lot this season. So stop leaving money behind and get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already do. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it is totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. I have to drive a lot from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, and you better believe I'm going to get at least some of that back. So don't let this offer drive on by, and download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code touchdown for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus on your first fill up. That's promo code touchdown. Disclaimer, offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions.
All right. Dylan,
What?
before we go, because I'm gonna lose this comment. My second favorite comment. The other one was explicit, but my second favorite comment is San Antonio Saint. Ross, turn down the Rico Suave. You shining too bright.
I can't. I was born this way, baby. I was born this way, baby.
All I have to say, Darian, is I don't believe you that there was an explicit comment in this chat section.
Oh, no.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way.
I should say I did actually. Alvin finished with 99 rushing yards.
Did it?
No.
They adjusted?
They took one away.
Yep. He finished with 99. I was close.
All right.
Hashtag
Ross was wrong again. All right. Let's get to our players of the game. And let's start with Darian.
Oh, man, this was a tough one. I spent half the game being pretty frustrated. I spent probably the second and third quarter hoping that Carl Granderson made another play so I could say it was Granderson. I thought his 2 sacks early were impressive. So I guess I'll go with Rattler. I liked what I saw. I thought it was another step up, and it may not have been the greatest performance, but I thought that I saw another level of his development in using his legs that we saw a little bit in week 1, but we saw it be a little bit more decisive in week 2, and we saw it be more gutsy in week 2. That run where it looked like he should have been stopped short, like maybe a yard short, and he ended up squirting by and getting about a couple 3 on 4th and 2, where he ended up shaking that 49ers slot corner, who had a pretty good game, by the way. I know this is a 49er podcast, but he had a pretty good game. But he ends up shaking him and playing that in between. Do I throw it to Kamara? Do I run? And holding enough time to cut up. I thought that we saw another level of that. This was a solid performance, best game like we have in the title. So I'll go with that. I'll go with Spencer Rattler. I'm glad you went with me first. I could do the easy, go with the developing QB route. So I'm going to go with him. Don't me when I said such an easy route.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, as in, I'm glad that you went to you too, because he was a good pick. I mean, career high in completion percentage, career high in touchdowns, his first ever multi-touchdown game, and career high in passer rating as well. I mean, 8 games, 7 games, 9 games, whatever. But still, they needed a really good performance from him in order to even be in this game, and they got it.
I think I would go with Justin Reed. Because, I think he, didn't have a terrible game week 1, but, you wanted to see a little bit more. You have Julian Blackmon going down, so you're going to need him to step up even more in the safety room. And I think that he had a pretty good day. He had 7 tackles, no missed tackles, which is a rarity for the Saints defense, especially today. And he gave up 2 catches, but only 7 yards. I think it was just an overall solid day. I think with the secondary looking poor just because I think Yada was so inefficient in coverage, I think the safeties actually played pretty well today. And I think so I'll give a shout out to Justin Reed and a little small shout out to Jonas Saker, because I think that they both had a pretty good day despite McCorkle Jones slicing up the defense as a whole.
McCorkle.
Ross, oh yeah, Ross. We crowned McCorkle Jones the new Vanilla Vic for that juke that he had earlier in the show.
I love it.
Okay, Ross, who's your player of the game?
I'll go with somebody that Darian mentioned, and I'll go with Carl Granderson. You guys got the right answers. I'm just adding a third one here. But Carl Granderson, like Darian said, 2 sacks in this game. Also had 3 tackles for a loss as well. Went into the tent for a little while and had to get checked up on, and then immediately found his way back out onto the football field. Tied with Isaac Yiadom with 3rd most combined tackles in this game with 7. Demario Davis, I don't know how this dude keeps doing what he does, but he 11 tackles, led the team, and had that fumble recovery. That was almost a turning point for the team. But so he gets a little bit of an honorable mention from me. But I'm going to go with Carl Granderson. The Saints are in a situation where they would like to be able to average 3 sacks per game. When you're getting 2 of them in 2 straight games by one guy. I mean, he had 1.5 last week, but he was in on 2 last week. He was in on 2 again this week. That's going to help you out quite a bit. And so him having 3.5 sacks through just the first 2 games, and having just 5.5 last year before Chase Young is even a part of this defense. I think this Saints pass rush has been a little bit of Their ability to finish at the quarterback has been a little bit of a bright spot for where they start the season so far, but just the lack of consistent pressure, I think, has been the thing that's been most concerning. But Granderson seems to be the one that has been consistently going out there and kind of getting to the quarterback.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some questions. Of course, you can still ask some more questions. Hashtag Ross was right again, even though he was wrong. No, about something else.
It's a long hashtag.
Yeah, no, but dude, hashtag Ross was right again. But let's get with some questions. First question for H-Town Creole: how did the offensive line play? Poorly. Moving on. No, I think we talked a little bit about it earlier. Talise Fuonga, something needs to be done. Probably sit until he can get fully healthy. He gave 4 pressures again today. At Florida last week. That's 8 through 2 games. He did play the entire game today, but I don't know if that was necessarily a great thing. Cesar Ruiz, Dylan Radens, they were all, they all struggled. Kelvin Banks looked good for most of the game, did give up a late sack. And then Eric McCoy's awesome. And I think he has always been, always will be. What do y'all think about the offensive line today?
I think that the offensive line for me was overall disappointing. We talked about it before, so I'm going to be brief and let Ross give his new perspective because I don't really have anything new to add other than actually, it's an hour show, so some people didn't see it in the beginning. So I will say it again, actually. I think that in the run game, I wanted more early. I wanted more out of them early, and I wanted to see them get more push. I don't know if they have it in them, but I would like to see it, and I'm going to continue to desire it, but we'll see if they can ever get to that point. In the past game, I thought that they let some things loose, specifically Fuang on the side. I thought that Ruiz had his moments where he let some things slip as well. So it was difficult to be excited about them. And I think that with all of the investment that they put into this unit, it may feel like, why are you guys being so harsh? It's the beginning of the year. But when you have that many first rounders, when you put that much investment into the unit, this comes with that, right? Like at the end of the day, fair is not treating the first round pick like the 7th round pick. That's not what fair is. It's an equality system where we have to be honest. There's higher expectations. We should hold them to a higher standard because I seen somebody mention putting Simpkins in the game, right? If Simpkins and Ruiz have the same game, the conversation is not the same. One has a longer history. One has a higher draft pick, right? One is not a fan favorite and probably never has been a fan favorite, while Simpkins' preseason performance was, I think it was very endearing to fans, almost surprisingly so as an offensive lineman. But one's UDFA, one's a first rounder. Like, it's not the same. So, yes, we're going to hold a higher standard for this offensive line because the Saints have invested so much in it.
Yeah. I'll say the only thing I'll add is that they got a really good player in Kelvin Banks Jr.
Yes.
They got a really, really good player in Kelvin Banks Jr. 1 pressure allowed in this game. Spent a lot of time. I'll have to go through and double check it, but spent a lot of time opposite Nick Bosa, who plays both sides of the line for San Francisco. And he was the first person in there when Spencer Rattler took that late hit on that rush out of bounds and everything like that. And so from a mentality standpoint, from an attitude standpoint, and from a production standpoint on the field, the Saints got a really, really good player so far in Kelvin Banks Jr. Just a couple games into his career.
You know what I thought was funny about the checking the late hit is you see Banks goes over and you also see McCoy goes over. And if you watch it, you see the difference in approach. You see the OG run over and I'm just going to kind of run and bump you, whatever. And then you see Banks come over as the young guy. I'm going to push you. Like it's
ready. He was ready. And that is not his demeanor. That is not his demeanor in locker rooms and all that other stuff at all. There's a switch that must flip for him when he hits the field because that's not Kelvin Banks Jr.'s like everyday demeanor. And so I like seeing that because I think it's a good thing to have players have that switch, have that gauge, have that other level. So,
all right, this is what I wanted to get to because I think it's too early to be talking about it, but there is something that I feel like we could address since it's early in the year of college football season 2. But do you think that Rattler has shown that he could develop enough that we will start talking about getting a defensive end in the first round of the 2026 draft, or maybe trade down for some draft capital? I would say more than it's way too early to be talking about that. But more than anything, I think the 2026 quarterback class has not done enough to be like, hey, we really need to go all out to be in the position to draft a quarterback in that group. There's not a single player right now through 3 weeks of the college football season that I'm ready to lay it all out for and be like, we need tank for this guy or anything like that. Yeah. And, to his point, you mentioned defensive end. There are a couple of defensive ends, Ruben Bain, TJ Parker. There are a couple of really good dudes that I think that this team can build around. So, I'll phrase it a little bit more as if, I don't think that it is a set thing that the Saints are going to draft a quarterback next year. And I think that it would be foolish through 2 weeks to say that, the Saints really need to draft someone else over Rattler or Shuck, because we really don't know what either of those two are going to be 4 or 5 weeks from now.
Yeah.
I went on this earlier, so it's all you, Ross.
Oh, yeah. I'll say if it's not a quarterback, defensive end or edge rusher is a very logical place to go next. The Saints do not have, and we haven't seen Chase Young yet, but the Saints right now do not have a defensive end or an edge rusher that has the presence that forces offenses to be afraid. That goes out there and is a game wrecker or is a game breaker. Cam Jordan playing his heart out in his 15th year and has had a couple of good games here. Carl Granderson's off to a really good start. Maybe he can grow into that. Maybe Chase Young is that. But as of right now, I can't confidently say that the Saints have that defensive end that is a game wrecker that'll show up in the fourth quarter for you. 22.5% pressure rate so far in this game, or not so far, the game's over, but in this week's game, I think you can do a lot to help yourself out there. So it feels like wide receiver. It feels like edge rusher. Like those are two spots that would make a lot of sense if you're in prime position to draft in the first round.
Yeah. And
if you don't go quarterback.
Yeah. Shout out to Brian Bresee for being the best pass rusher of this team from the interior. Even he didn't have a great, fully consistent game, but I think that, again, he has continued to look pretty stellar as a pass rusher on the interior. Another one. So what's the next step? Who needs to step up? Hashtag Ross was right again. What is the next step for this team? They're 0-2. They're going, they still have a couple of really tough games before they get to that Giants game that we've circled as a win. I don't know if that's so certain anymore. Especially after today's performance with them, that offense looks scary whenever they're working right and Malik Neighbors is working. So what's the next step from here, Ross? Let's start with you.
Got to get the defense together. Defense has got to get it together. This is, look, they allowed less than 100 rushing yards in this game, only 77 rushing yards, so a good step forward there. But I don't think that they did enough to neutralize the rushing game. I think the passing game was just working. And so I think that is the biggest thing. It was a combination of rush and coverage, which very much needs to improve as they continue to move forward. So that's kind of the next step for this team, is to see them do that. Everything that we talked about going into this game was how there was no George Kittle, how there was no Brandon Ayuk, how there was no Brock Purdy, and then during the game they lost Kyle Juszczyk. They had Mac Jones starting out at quarterback. They never even really put Marquez Valdez-Scantling out on the field, all this other stuff. And yet this Saints team still gave up 26 points to that offense, not to the defense, not on some punt and return touchdown, not on anything like that. Still gave up 26 points on the defensive side of the football, and had some big time either blown coverages or just things that San Francisco dialed up perfectly, whichever it was. But I think that those two things, that in particular, is kind of the next step for me. Everything about this game was, can the Saints offense topple a healthy San Francisco 49ers defense? I thought that the offense performed pretty well. Drop passes, inaccurate throws, all that other stuff. Pressure allowed, still a part of the conversation, no doubt about it. But I thought that the offense outperformed the defense in a game where the defense was supposed to have the easier job. And so I think that that's got to be the next thing for the Saints team.
Yeah, I would say coming in, I thought that maybe some of the chances at victory were overblown due to the injuries, but that was largely based upon thinking that the offense was going to struggle more than they did. So I thought that was a great point that you made. Who needs to step up? What's the next step? It's time to clean up the penalties. It's time to clean up the unforced errors, right? You went from 13 penalties to 7 penalties in this game, but I'm thinking about, I think at the beginning when we did our conversation, Dilly, I think that was 4 penalties that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. You had the ineligible downfield, you had the holding on offense. Those 2 took away first downs. You had the hands to the face and the defensive pass interference. Those gave first downs. And of the 7, that's 4. So at least half, and that I just don't remember the other 3, right? At least half of your penalties gave a first down or took away a first down. That is unacceptable. So what's the next step? Clean those things up. Unfortunately, I think that you squandered some opportunities early in the season by having these penalties. So the record is going to look how the record looks. But moving forward, if it's actually about just not looking at the score and evaluating what this team looks like, That's the number one thing that I'm looking for. Rattler, he'll progress how he progresses. The defense, they'll tackle how they tackle. They'll the back end will be the back end. We'll see all of these things. But I don't know if any of it is going to matter if they can't protect themselves from themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I agree with both of those things. I think the what's next for the Saints, win a game. And then we can, I actually don't think that's next. I think there are a couple more losses coming before there's a win. But I do think that overall, just at this point, the way the team has looked so far this season, what I want to see next is the young guys continue to improve, because it's very clear. And I think like the Jalen Polk move, we haven't gotten to talk about. I think it's very clear that the team is, acknowledging without acknowledging that this is a rebuild, is a full-on rebuild. And I think that we're in the early stages. So all you can really ask for is the young players to play good. But for the next couple of weeks, I'll still enjoy Demario Davis defying logic by playing incredible football. And he might not be a piece of the next Super Bowl winning team in New Orleans, but I think that I'll enjoy watching him for as long as he suits up in the black and gold. Same goes for Cam Jordan.
Yeah, no, I guess this sounds kind of like closing remark time, so I'll end with a quote. Big Equalizer fan here, and one of the quotes that Denzel says is that when you pray for the rain, you got to deal with the mud too. So in this rebuild process that we've wanted for years and years, I feel like we have to understand it's going to be some sloppiness. It's going to be some misplays. You're looking at Kellen Moore, who is a first-time head coach, and he's going to take his bumps. We saw that last week with the timeout situation. I think we're seeing it a little bit with some of the discipline. It's just part of it, right? It's not all bad. So it's not like, dreary, but at the same time, they are in a place where they're kind of supposed to make these type of mistakes. It doesn't excuse them. I won't excuse them. But to me, it's just an accurate description and depiction of where they are in week 2 going into week 3.
Ross, any closing remarks? Because that was awesome.
Yeah, that was great. No, I don't have any. That should be the end. I was looking at different Denzel quotes. I've got it. I would need more time. I think that was great.
All right.
Well, thank you.
I was gonna go with one from Training Day, but I'll save it.
King Kong? No, not that one. King Kong doesn't have.
That's the first one that came to my mind.
You want to put Isaac in 23-hour lockdown? Well, how are we going with this one?
I got another Equalizer quote. He said, "There are 2 kinds of pain in the world: the pain that hurts and the pain that alters." And so we'll see which one the New Orleans Saints suffered today.
I like that.
That man.
Now, Ross, I want you to know I got a list of sayings. We can go band for band every week.
You'll win. You win. I'll tap out. I'm out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's the Ross taps out. He knows when to hold him and knows when to fold him. There's a quote from somewhere.
Wow.
Not Denzel, but I'll end on that. Thank you for listening to the Saints Squad Show. Check out me, Ross, and Darian on our socials for the latest. We'll be right back here on Wednesday night to talk a little bit more about what's happening, a little bit more in depth. We'll have Lance and all of them. And then we're going to be previewing the next game, and we'll be right back here the next Sunday to talk more Saints football, no matter what happens. But until then, be sure to listen to Locked On Saints for your most up-to-date and your constant reminders about what's going on with Saints football. And I'll see you all on Wednesday.